Well, what a big welcome to the wonderful family and friends of Christina and Erica. We are so happy to have you all here to celebrate the baptism of Harper Shea Carrillo. So special she is. Last Sunday when they were all here, my daughters during the service leaned over to me and said, "Mom, do you see that baby? She is so cute." It's true. We're so happy to have you all. So thankfully our readings today touch on themes that are actually quite fitting for the sacrament of baptism, and that doesn't always happen. We have Rebecca giving birth, and we have the water theme. We have Paul extensively talking to the Romans about living in the heart space of Christ. And then we have Jesus talking to the crowd, not from the beach, but from the sea, pointing us toward the importance of water. And Jesus then telling the famous parable of the sower, which many of us have heard, sharing about the fruitfulness of seeding and sowing and the ups and downs of that process. So this week, as I meditated on the readings in preparation for today, I continued to be drawn back into my childhood memories of my own introduction to kind of having a green thumb. As a child, I was often assigned different chores in my family, and the one I enjoyed the most was when I got to water the house plants. And my mom had a lot of them growing all over, plus a lot of macrame holders because it was the 70s. She had some plants hanging on the wall, some on stands, some were 6 feet tall, and then we had a whole bunch of little pots all over. Well, I devised a special system where I would take the plant over to the kitchen sink, and we had a small kitchen sink, but it was a double bin kitchen sink, so side by side. So I bring the plant over, I water it in the first section, and then I place it in the second bin, which I called the waiting room. And it was the waiting room because a few times I had rushed the plant back over to its holder right after the watering, but drips of dirty water were squeaking out from the bottom because it had dried. So the waiting room included a 5-minute wait time for the plants to enjoy all of its nourishment and dry up with plenty of time to be tenderly placed back in its stand or holder and no mess. I smile with joy in my heart when I think about those chore times. And I also chuckle when I think about the very different process I now have with my adult house plant watering regimen. Watering with that special childhood presence, care, and intentionality, that's part of my current process maybe 50% of the time. There certainly isn't a waiting room these days, and in fact, some days, depending on what's going on, I may water the plants in their holders, talk a little bit to them, and then race off to do the next thing. But you know, as the days rolled by this week, I came to the conclusion that that's okay. There are all kinds of ways to plant and water and sow, as evidenced by our gospel today. While we know that the optimal way to plant seeds are those that are sowed into lush, moist, fruitful soil, we aren't always in that space. In life, we sometimes feel like we just have time to dash the seeds, and then some of the birds might take them all, and we're left with nothing. I bet we've also felt like the sower whose seeds weren't quite deep enough to proliferate. Sometimes we felt that way. Those times we live life on the surface, where maybe we're a little too afraid to be vulnerable and go deep. Might feel too risky, and so we stay above ground. We can relate. And I bet all of us at one time or another have sowed seeds that have brought out kind of a negative side of life. Maybe where we contributed to gossip, or we say something hurtful to someone, or we expressed anger that was misplaced. Like the thorns, our actions may have contributed to choking out that goodness in life. Fortunately, we've also been the sower that has proliferated the fullness of life, planting those seeds with intentionality and presence and love, kind of like the tender care of the plants when I was a kid. And I think we can do that as adults too, especially when we are in close connection with God, to that main source of love, moving from that place in the world. We know that when we're in touch with that love, those sowing moments bear fruit and harvests that are hundredfold. So what a perfect gospel for our baptism today. We are all here to proclaim for Harper, as well as for ourselves, that we are going to do our best to exemplify God's love and sow seeds that produce a harvest of more love. We'll let Harper know that she is supported by all of us, and especially by God. In a moment, Mother Kristen, along with the immediate family, Harper and her godparents, will process to the baptismal font in the back of the church. Christina and Erica, as well as Harper's godparents, will boldly proclaim their own Christian faith and commit to guiding Harper on her journey of faith. And then the St. Lawrence community will also boldly proclaim to do everything we can to support all of them, as well as our own faith journeys. Godparents, Luz and Gerardo, Rachel and Matt, just like parenting, there's no handbook for godparenting. But being a community of faith and following the path of Jesus Christ, we do have guideposts about how we can live into our faith and be supportive of Harper. Your important roles in Harper's life remind us all how to support her and one another and how to live in the light of God. Number one, we are going to guide Harper with love. We're going to do our best to nurture the gifts that are unique to her, to nourish her growth in becoming all that God intends her to be. Number two, we are going to walk in faith with God alongside Harper and one another. Not that we have all the answers about God, but that we authentically wrestle with our faith, and that God can handle it and is with us through it all. Number three, we are going to bear witness to Jesus' example of living and show Harper how to stand up for those that are suffering, those that are outcast, those that are disenfranchised. We'll do our best to exemplify what it means to be Christian and address the injustices and hurts of the world, actively working to create God's kingdom on earth. Friends and family, today, this sacrament of baptism honors our commitment to God and to one another, proclaiming that we will plant, water, and sow seeds as best we can. Some days with that loving, compassionate waiting room, and sometimes with a rush of expediency. But most importantly, we can remind each other that no matter how we sow, how we water, or how we plant, we are held as God's beloved, loved by a love beyond measure, and always invited to participate in that relationship, receiving God's unending support, grace, mercy, and love. Amen.
Amen.